A former investigative journalist named I.M. Fletcher, or Fletch to his friends, travels to Boston to track down stolen artwork from a kidnapped European count and gets framed for the murder of a young airline stewardess in Gregory McDonald's Confess Fletch, which became one of the best movies released during the pandemic in Greg Mottola's 2022 reboot of the Fletch franchise, also titled Confess Fletch and starring John Hamm. Welcome to Crime Novels to Film. I'm Jeffrey A. Cooper. Confess Fletch, written by Gregory MacDonald, was published by Gollancz on March 12, 1976. It was the second novel in the 9-book Fletch series about the former Marine turned investigative journalist. Like its predecessor, 1974's Fletch, which was the novel that started the series, Confess Fletch won the Edgar Award for Best Paperback Original in 1977. Fletch arrives in Boston, where he's hired an art dealer named Ronald Horan to track down a lost Picasso painting. The artwork was stolen from the kidnapped and presumed dead Count de Grassi, the father of Fletch's fiancée, Angela. At the house he's rented, Fletch finds the naked body of a dead airline stewardess. The police are called, and Inspector Francis Xavier Flynn and his assistant Grover arrive to question Fletch. Fletch isn't arrested by Inspector Flynn, despite fingerprints that link him to the crime. Inspector Flynn is gentle, but relentlessly persistent in his quest to get Fletch to admit to the murder. Fletch also has to contend with the bombastic Countess de Grassi, Angela's stepmother, who arrives in Boston and takes over Fletch's apartment. Angela and her stepmother can't stand each other, and both make claims for the stolen artwork, and Fletch for that matter. Fletch's investigation centers on art dealer Ronald Horan and Bart Connor, the man who rented Fletch the house he's staying in. He talks to his boozy next-door neighbor Joan, a former lover of Bart's, who claims she saw Bart with the dead girl. Fletch visits Inspector Flynn and poses his theories on Ruth's murder. First, he brings up Bart Connors. After Bart's wife left him, Bart was very sexually active and had a lot of girls over. Fletch tells him about Joan, the next-door neighbor, who has a key and a grudge against Bart. He also raises the possibility of Lucy Connors, Bart's ex-wife. Flynn tells Fletch he'll get back to him. Fletch goes to Horan's house and breaks in so the cops and Horan show up. Horan browbeats the police. They leave and Fletch gains access to Horan's house. He goes inside and finds almost all of the stolen artwork from the de Grassi collection. Fletch recovers nearly all of the stolen artwork he was tasked to find. Inspector Flynn has done his own investigating. Flynn's a man who never forgets anything that's said to him, and he slowly, the man's nickname is Reluctant after all, puts everything together in a well-thought-out piece of police detective work. I won't spoil it, or how it's all figured out. You have to get to that on your own. I enjoyed Flynn's deductive method. I think you'll like it too. I did like the final twist at the end of the book. It's not one of those gut punch twists, but more of a you didn't know what you didn't know kind of reveal that, once you know it, it puts everything that happened prior to it in a completely new light. I'm a big fan of the Fletch novels, and I enjoyed Confess Fletch. I like the humor in MacDonald's writing, from his snappy dialogue to the creation of some truly inspired comic characters. Confess Fletch is an entertaining, engaging read. There's a lot of different plot threads, but the book never feels heavy or weighed down. The story's easy to follow, it's very funny, it has an unpredictable conclusion, and is filled with great, memorable characters. Fletch is smart, resourceful, and clever, curious, tenacious, and determined. His strength is intellectual more than physical. The guy's a shapeshifter who can be whoever he needs to be to get to the truth. He keeps his cool in every situation and maintains his sense of humor, even in situations that would make most people extremely nervous. Here's an example. At the start of the book, Fletch calls the police to report the murder. This is the police business phone. Isn't murder police business? You're supposed to call emergency with a murder. I think the emergency is over. Fletch isn't a perfect man, nor is he a perfect hero. He's forever dodging alimony from 2 of his ex-wives, he misrepresents himself repeatedly to get what he's after, and he's not exactly the most honest guy to his fiancée. He's a walking contradiction, a man who lies in order to get to the truth. He's also very clever, charming, and funny. I don't want Fletch to be perfect. It would make him a lot less interesting. The supporting characters in Confess Fletch really stood out. Andy's stepmother Sylvia, the Countess de Grassi, is hysterical. On the one hand, a manipulative schemer, while on the other, she can be earnest, forthright, and loving, especially with family. You can hear her entire accent just by the way she says his name.
Fletch.
My favorite character, however, was Inspector Flynn. It would be easy to fall into the stereotypical Irish police detective in Boston. You can hear that accent too. But Flynn is far from the stereotypical detective. His pace is slow and methodical. He asks pointed, detailed questions, and he never forgets anything anyone tells him. He's a great cop, someone who's not flashy or pretentious, but a guy who gets the job done. He's a slow and steady wins the race kind of guy, but it's not his crime solving, his eccentricities, or even his droll sense of humor that got to me. Flynn's character surprised me in a couple of ways I didn't expect to be surprised. Flynn tells Fletch about being a member of the Hitler Youth movement when he was a young boy, which was especially unusual because Flynn was Irish and living in Munich, where his parents became spies for the Allies and were later executed. Remember, this book came out in 1976. Try finding that in the backstory of any other Irish cops. There's another part of the book where Fletch visits Flynn and his large family at home, where Flynn's children perform a classical music concert for Fletch in their living room. Both of these sections humanized a character that could have easily fallen into the typical big city Irish cop. It's easy to see how Inspector Flynn got his own series of books. He's a memorable character and a great foil for Fletch in this book. It took over 3 decades to bring Fletch back to the big screen. Fletch movies have been in what Hollywood calls development hell ever since the Chevy Chase starring films ended in 1989. Directors Kevin Smith and Bill Lawrence came close, while several actors have been tied to different Fletch projects over the years, including Jason Lee, Ben Affleck, Zach Braff, Jason Sudeikis, and Ryan Reynolds. It was announced in July of 2020 that Jon Hamm would produce and star in an adaptation of Confess Fletch, the second Fletch novel, that would be written and directed by Greg Mottola, whose previous films included the comedies Superbad and Adventureland. Rumor has it that director Mottola and star Hamm returned a portion of their salaries to secure an additional 3 days of filming. Confess Fletch was released during the height of the COVID pandemic. It saw a very limited release in theaters and was sold primarily as a premium at-home rental. I really enjoyed Jon Hamm's Fletch, and I love where he went with the character. Fletch is a great role that takes advantage of Hamm's natural charisma and great comedic timing. Hamm plays Fletch a lot closer to the book version than Chevy did, and I think the movie is better for it. I love Chevy's performance. I've seen the first movie at least 20 times, but Chevy could easily fall into shtick. He used a lot of silly disguises and easy stereotypes trying to be funny, especially in the second movie. Jon Hamm's Fletch is never trying to be funny. He is funny, but he doesn't need silly buck teeth to do it. Hamm's Fletch is funny because of how he reacts to the characters and the situation around him. He's not doing shtick. Inspector Flynn became Sergeant Inspector Monroe for the film and was played by Roy Wood Jr. They didn't change much about the character. Roy Wood Jr. is terrific in this role. If they ever do adapt the Flynn novels, I hope Roy Wood Jr. continues in the role. He captures the droll humor of Flynn's character from the book, his slow but steady investigative method, and the exhausted energy of a new parent. Grover, Flynn's assistant from the book, gets an expanded role in the movie, becoming Junior Detective Grizz, short for Griselda, and is played by the magnificent Aidan Maeri. Lorenza Izzo was funny and charming as Angela, also known as Andy. Kyle MacLachlan brought an intense, neurotic menace to the role of Boston art dealer Ronald Horan, and John Slattery does a funny turn as Fletch's old boss, who runs a Boston newspaper. I thought Annie Mumolo, who played the next-door neighbor Eve and was the character Joan in the book, was fantastic. Boozy, flaky, and kooky, she's the next-door neighbor you always want to see on screen, and the next-door neighbor you never hope you have in real life. She's terrific. I didn't realize how much I missed watching Marcia Gay Harden until I watched her as the Contessa. She's funny, sexy, and maddening, sometimes all at the same time. It's a wonderful comedic performance by a great actress in a great role. Just pray you never get someone like her as your mother-in-law. Confess Fletch was a great example of how to adapt a novel into a film. The changes that Greg Mottola made were pretty minor. For example, in the book, Horan stores the artwork in a house. In the movie, he stores them on a yacht. In the book, Fletch gives the stolen paintings to a New York City art dealer named Kasner that he trusts to hold them for the Count. While in the movie, Fletch ends up with the previous stolen Picasso in his boat, which was given to him as a gift. For the movie, characters in the book like Fletch's maid, Anne Sawyer, were dropped, while characters like the Commodore were added. None of these changes affected my enjoyment of the film. The best novel-to-film adaptations, in my opinion, keep the best parts of the novel, and Confess Fletch does. There were many different plot threads in the book, something that would have been tough to replicate in a 98-minute movie, but the screenplay by Zev Barreau and director Greg Mottola does a great job balancing the multi-layered plot and the strong supporting characters with a genuinely funny, charismatic lead who finds that right balance between murder mystery and comedy. I hope they make 10 more of these. Greg Mottola has been quoted in interviews as saying that he's continuing work on the follow-up, Fletch's Fortune, again starring Jon Hamm, but isn't convinced the film will be made considering its box office numbers, pandemic or not. As long as the possibility is out there that the film will be made, Greg Mottola will be there to bring it to life. This week's winner, in a close vote with myself, I'm going with the movie. I enjoyed both versions of this story, but I think the movie had a bigger hill to climb than the book. It would have been easy for the filmmakers to go the same route the Chevy Chase movies did, but they went back to the source material instead, creating a character worth making an ongoing series about. This week, the movie. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? What did I miss? Let me know in the comments. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you watching this show. I'll be back on the next edition of Crime Novels to Film.